Welcome to the Backpacking Podcast, brought to you by Outdoor Vitals, makers of performance-first ultralight gear. Happy Veterans Day to everybody right now. And if you are a former military, current military, thank you so much for your service. We here at the Backpacking Podcast are so thankful for the freedom that we have. I know it's been a hard week for some people. Regardless, whichever side you were on this past week when the election happened, your side won or your side lost. But the nice thing is we can all agree that we're thankful for the veterans who have put their lives out there for us, the men and women who risk it all so that we have the ability to choose. So we're thankful for all of you. Jeremiah, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, man. Ooh, that gives me chills.
That was good stuff, man. That was good stuff tonight.
Awesome intro.
Listen.
I wanted to add Outdoor Vitals right now, by the way. They're our title sponsor, and they're having a huge Black Friday sale.
It's already Black Friday, and we're only in like the second week of November. They've already hit Black Friday.
Yeah, and everything on their site, literally everything, they're having a deal on right now. So go to outdoorvitals.com and buy yourself something nice for Christmas.
Or buy us something nice for Christmas.
Amen.
I mean, come on. We're your favorite podcast, right?
One would hope.
All right, man. So what have you been up to this past week, Jeremiah?
Well, we took the baby for his 4-month shots today. My wife just texted me and said she had to give him some Tylenol. It breaks my heart hearing that cry. Mm-hmm. They shoot him with the shots, and then he's, ah! So that's been my life and keeping this puppy from chewing everything up and pooping all over the house. No accidents today, for the record.
That's good. That's good. Jeremiah, I got to tell you about something, though.
What
You've got it easy right now with the shots. It's terrible watching them cry. The worst is when they turn like 2 or 3. And you're holding them down so they can get their shots. And then when they get the shot and they all of a sudden realize, you just held me down so they could do this. And they look at you with that look of like, you're helping them do this. It's the worst feeling in the world, man. I've never felt bad as a father until that day. That was awful. That was absolutely awful. Also, man, well, first off, it's hunting season here. It's rifle season here, deer season here in Kentucky. I was out Saturday, no luck, but I'm going back out tomorrow morning. So as soon as we're done here, I got to pack up some stuff and go to bed because I'm getting up really early to get out and hopefully come back with what will end up being a cooler full of venison. So,
well, share some of that with me, man. I'm needing to make some deer chili.
Oh,
I seen
man.
Jonathan was making some, and I was like, oh, that looks so good.
Did he get one?
I drove straight home. But no, he has deep freeze, so I guess it's
right.
from last year's deer. But I saw your picture you posted. I don't know if that was on your personal or your Instagram or personal Facebook.
That was Inside the Blind, man. I was watching beautiful sunrise on Saturday morning.
Man, this guy's got to get up early to get to sunrise. And I was like, wait a second. Daylight savings time. Sunrise is like 9:30 a.m. I used to watch it on the way to work, and now I watch it from my classroom in the morning out the window.
I know, man. I know. Hey, so you were talking about your puppy, right?
Yeah.
Well, we are going to possibly look at a puppy either this weekend or next weekend.
Oh,
so
my goodness.
Getting a lab, probably Labrador Retriever. So
well, maybe when we come over for dinner, our puppies can play.
Hey, that'd be fun, man.
Yeah,
that'd be fun.
Family dinner.
Hopefully, we can get this thing potty trained quickly. The one we're getting ready to look at is actually already 15 weeks old. So.
All right. Yeah.
It'll be a little bigger. It'll still be a little bigger though. But we're excited. The kids are really excited. I told them, I said, though, you have to prove that you can keep all your Legos cleaned up because I don't want that dog choking on Legos. So
yeah, dude, they'll eat anything. They chew it all up.
Dude, I'm telling you, I think having a dog is gonna save my feet.
Why do you say that?
Because I won't be stepping on Legos if the kids do what they're supposed to do. Speaking of dads. And speaking about the military, we have an incredible guest tonight. Just kind of out of pure, I guess, circumstance, he and I both were part of the Backpacking with Your Kids Summit a few months ago. His wife happened to just send us an email and say, hey, would you consider having Brent on the show? And we found more out about him, and we were just like, this guy's basically the man.
Yeah, it definitely is.
And so we want to welcome onto the show for his first time ever, our new friend and just an awesome guy, Brent Fuchs. What's going on, man?
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's going good, man. It's going good.
So I was reading a little bit about you, and you, it looks like grew up in the mountains of Utah. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct. Yeah, I grew up
So
in Heber City, Park City area.
where is it?
It's like Park City and Heber City area. It's just east of Salt Lake City.
Okay, now my only experience with Utah and the mountains and stuff is the Uintas, and that's just because I've met a couple people, and I don't know if we had them on the podcast, but saw them here in Kentucky, at Red River Gorge, and they were telling me all about the Uintas. But I assume there's more mountain ranges there, and just God's beauty, basically.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I grew up right there near the Uintas, and the thing that's crazy about the Uintas is they go east to west instead of north to south. So they run into the Wasatch Mountain Range, which creates just some beautiful country to go backpacking and just camping and see everything.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
before
I'm telling you what, it's one of those states that I need to get to.
Yeah,
It's one of those states I need to get to. Our good friend Devin Ashby lives out there, and man, the stuff that you guys have. You have deserts, you have mountains, you have wilderness. I mean, you guys pretty much have like this cavalcade of just different terrains, and it's just beautiful, absolutely beautiful out there.
outdoor paradise for sure.
Yeah.
Well, before the show, we were talking about you getting hypothermia while you're out in Utah. So
Yeah.
I know we're going to get into it's Veterans Day. You served a lot, actually. You served your country a lot. And I want to talk about some of that stuff and some of the special skills that you've acquired through your training and through, just the expertise of being on the job. But before we get there, I'd love for you to tell everybody about your experience with hypothermia and how they can prevent it.
Yeah, yeah. So that was a fun one. So my brothers and I, we always had an annual backpacking trip that we would do in June, and it was in the high Uintas, so kind of the backcountry. And one year we went up there. It was beautiful weather. We set up a base camp near Granddaddy Lake, which is a real beautiful place. But then we wanted to hike up to an area that's kind of like an enclosed lake, and they had grayling fish there, and it was the only place in the Uintas that they had them. So we're like, hey, we're gonna go catch some grayling. So we hike up there. It's a beautiful box canyon, just super picturesque, and we were catching some grayling fish, having the time of our lives, and some storm clouds started rolling in, and we're like, hey, it's about 2 miles back to where we like set up our camp. Let's head on back. So we started heading back, and it started pouring. Then it turned into sleet really quick, and then it was like going back and forth between sleet and snow. And this was late June. And anyway,
Wow.
so we were getting soaked. We got everyone back, started a fire, and started setting up a tarp to kind of keep the fire dry. And as this was happening, I was sitting there tending to the fire. And someone was like, and I had kept my chest dry and warm, which was a key in like I had found in staying warm in those environments to that point. And someone was like, oh, there's a bunch of water collecting in the middle of this tarp. So they just dumped it. Well, it hit me on the back of the neck and ran straight down into my chest. And it was just a bunch of
Oh
ice.
no.
And I immediately felt the air go out of me. And I felt my hands locking up. And I was like, this is not good. So I sat there and tried to get warm by the fire, but it was just pounding on me, the rain and the sleet still. And I stayed there a little too long, is what I would guess. And I was like, guys, I'm going to die. And I started trying to get my jacket off, and I was fighting for it. Got my sleeping bag thrown under my tent and dove in there and just climbed in. And I was like, I'm good. I've got this. And I wasn't good. A few minutes later, I kind of like fell asleep, and my brother came and found me, climbed in there with me, got some heat packs, put them into my armpits, and just hugged me until I came to. And then the worst part about it is I came to and I started like wanting to throw up, because when you start freezing, your body triages everything, and it diverts the blood away from your stomach first. And so then the blood came back into my stomach really fast, and that's not a perfect feeling. But yeah, one of the things that I learned from that experience is always stay warm and dry. And no matter how wet you are, throw on some rain gear because it can always get worse. And then heat up what you can as soon as you can. So, yeah.
Wow. I never really thought about this, but I've told this story on the podcast before, so I won't go deep into it. But when we were in Holy Cross Wilderness, we had a similar situation, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, it starts hailing. You're at high, I assume you're at high elevation. We were at, 10 to 13,000 feet, somewhere in there. And we thought it was altitude sickness, but one of the guys was throwing up. And I bet it also could have been a combination of hypothermia or like the onset of hypothermia too. It was cold. It goes from like 70 degrees to like 38 degrees in an hour, and the wind's coming. We had to build the fire to try to warm everybody up. So that makes sense about what you're saying about the blood rushing back to your stomach. I'm just spitballing here, but I would guess.
We had a guy in Kilimanjaro who decided it would be a good idea to do the last couple days of it in trail runners. Oh. And the temperatures were 0 degrees with a negative 30 wind chill. And he was in trail runners. And I remember getting to camp that night and him just putting his feet in front of the fire and doing everything he could to heat his feet up because they were in bad shape. You can't play around with it. That's for dang sure. If you mess around with hypothermia, you can cause some permanent damage that cannot be repaired.
Oh yeah, yeah. And
did y'all cut that guy's toes off?
Huh?
Did you cut that guy's toes off?
No, it didn't fully set in. No, I was like, okay. I was not sure to figure out what you're saying. I'm like, what's he talking about? But no.
That's my accent.
It wasn't that bad. But he was real close. I mean, his feet were so sore and painful, and not because of the hiking, if you know what I mean. So he said it felt like there were 1,000 needles just piercing his skin all at one time. So
wow,
it's pretty bad.
So Brent, let's segue into actually how the backpacking started for you. I mean, I read that you're an avid outdoorsman. I assume you grew up hunting, fishing, or at least backpacking or hiking or something. Did you just fall in love with it, or did somebody drag you along, or what happened?
Yeah, so I grew up, I had 2 older brothers, and we were all very active in Boy Scouts, which was the thing to do out there. And so I always looked forward to camping. My family and I, we all camped all the time. We had a large family, so that was the value vacation, was just drive up into the mountains and enjoy the mountains. And so we loved it all growing up. Then I got into scouting and loved it even more, became an Eagle Scout. And then after that, that's when I went and I served a mission in Brazil, and then came back, and 9/11 happened. And so I was getting ready to join the military. I got injured, and just part of my recovery was spending time out in the mountains, to the extent that I had to have a cane. So I blew out a tendon in my left ankle, and I had to have a cane to walk for a little while after the surgery and after it healed. And I went into the mountains with my brother, and I cut down the perfect cane for me and carved it into a cane and walked around with it for a few months until I was able to rehab that. So the wilderness just became a big part of that. And then I took a job as a survival guide, which I loved, and it just was time outdoors all the time. Just doing what I loved. It was great. It got to where coming home was almost felt like I was leaving home, to leave the wilderness to come home and spend time for a bit and then go back out.
So, wow.
I know a lot of people in the audience can relate to that.
Yeah, we got a few good comments on here real quick. I just want to throw these out here. Gone Feral with Squidly says, I drove through Utah at night, so I've driven all the way through it and haven't seen any of it. It's sad. Got a couple new commenters. At least they're not people I've seen comment before. Rachel Jean, the Gypsy Queen, says, this is very excellent reminders as we go into the winter season to be extra prepared, especially those up north. True statement. And then Tyler, who told us before the podcast got started that he's been listening for the past couple of weeks, and he's finally caught up from episode 1 to episode 76. So he's been listening to a lot the last few weeks.
Yeah.
But it's his first live stream. He said, I fell through the ice and couldn't get out for a few minutes. It's definitely a learning experience. Ice safety is important along with how to get out. So great point there too. I've never actually, I've been out on ice before. I've never had ice break. I can't imagine the helplessness that you have to feel when that ice breaks and you go through it.
Yeah, I've never fallen through ice, so I don't know.
Jeremiah probably did on the long trail.
No, I didn't experience any ice, but that same Colorado trip I was talking about, we got up there and there was snow and ice everywhere. I mean, it gets pretty crazy. I don't know what I'd do, but I want to talk to you for a second about the survival guide expert. So
Yeah.
ever since I was a kid, I was probably just scared of the dark, but I'd always sleep with the TV on, and sometimes you press, let me put it on sleep and it's going to go off in an hour. But most of the time I just let it play and I left it on Discovery Channel. And some of my favorite shows to watch were Man versus Wild, which is Bear Grylls. I also loved Les Stroud's show, Survivor Man, and Man, Woman, Wild, who also was a military vet. I don't know if you've seen that show, but he was a Kentucky guy and he married this woman that was a reporter out of Britain. And I don't know, there's several shows like this. You had Dave Canterbury and Cody Lundeen. I can't remember the name of their show, but I'm wondering, what do you think about these guys? Is it fake across the board? Some guys faking some stuff, and they got a hotel. Like I hear Bear Grylls, he's got a hotel, but then they go have this survival situation in Iceland, and then he shows how to get out of the lake where the ice breaks, and then he gets to the shore, and then they take him back to the hotel, and they edit it all so that it looks like a nice, good story and everything. Do you think these guys are actual experts? Because a lot of them are military vets, whether in the U.S. or somewhere else. How much knowledge do you think they have, and how much of that is more just like TV?
Um, from what I've seen that they produce, everything's been pretty spot on. Um, some of the stuff I have seen footage of it like right next to a highway or whatever where they're doing some learning. Um, but they seem like experts to me just based on what they're putting out. I can't say whether or not they're being honest about their survival situations or they're going to a hotel every night. I will
Mhm.
say after I had hypothermia, um, I didn't feel like hiking the next day. I felt pretty wiped out, and I was
Yeah.
in really good shape at that point in my life. So yeah.
What kind of survival situations have you been in? I mean, I know you've done multiple tours, whether it's Syria or Lebanon or Iraq or Afghanistan, especially after 9/11 there. But what what survival situations besides the hypothermia have you ever faced?
There's been a few of them. So when I was a survival guide, there was a time where we got stuck in a flash flood
Oh man.
scenario where so that
Yeah,
was
tell me
down
about
in
that.
yeah, so that was down in southern Utah, Nevada, and Arizona area. When I was doing that, I was working for a company called Red Rock Ascent, and we had a group and we were going along, and just ominous clouds. Just watch out for ominous clouds, right? But the topsoil in the desert down there doesn't hold the water very great. So when you get strong rains, it just rushes down those canyons really quickly. And we started having some rains come in, and I was looking at our map and I was like, hey, we're kind of in the low ground. So we found some high ground as fast as we could, and we got pinned in. Basically, the two little dry stream beds on either side of this high ground just turned into rivers. And we're like, well, this is where we are for the night. And that's where we
Oh,
stayed. And the next day it was, they were, they were muddy stream beds the next day. But so that was one of them where it was like, hey, we have what we have here. Like, let's make the best of this situation and figure it out. So,
did
yeah,
you have a group with you at that
I
point,
did.
or were you just
Yeah, there
okay?
were about 10 of us on that trip. There was one other guy, there were two other guides and seven students. So,
And who's the head man in charge?
On that one, I was.
Okay, what
So
what was going
I was
through your
the group leader. Yeah.
okay? And tell me about the situation whenever it starts happening. So you see the clouds coming in, you're like, "Oh, we need to make decisions now and get out of this lowland." And
Yeah.
the other two guys or girls are looking at you and they're not questioning anything. They're just like, "This guy's in
Yeah.
charge. He's the expert."
Yeah. Well, and at that point, we had worked together a bunch, and I'd like to think that they trusted me pretty well at that point, and they
Mhm.
trusted my intuition because we hadn't had any serious issues up to that point. And so yeah, after that, it really goes into like task management. It's like, okay, we need to get a shelter. So like, you guys start working on the shelter. You guys start collecting what firewood you can. You guys start looking for food sources, and then you guys set up a water catch because it's raining. Like, we're not going to waste that in the desert. And so you just really quickly fall into your jobs and build just a quick little bivouac site and call it a night, basically.
Man.
All right. I was wondering if I'm sure it's circumstantial because like you are in the desert and there's certain things that you have to consider with that territory, but is it basically the same general principles or steps for the survival situation depending on the terrain? Like you said, first thing you wanted shelter, second, you had to have water and there was you done a rain catch because of the circumstances and
Yeah.
you kind of divvy it up. Is it pretty much like that? Same Pretty much the same steps?
Yeah. Yeah. You're always looking for the, wherever you're going, you're looking for a bunch of things. You're looking for wood, water, uh, protection from the wind. You're avoiding any widowmakers, things that are going to kill you, stuff like that. And it's in every environment. The thing that changes is if you get into primitive fire making. So in the desert, the plants are way different than here in Tennessee or Kentucky or anything like that. So just knowing what works well with what, and I found that it was more about friction and wood density than it was about just like what wood is more flammable than the others. So yeah,
And
like
what about a
hmm?
go ahead.
Oh no,
Yeah,
your question's probably valid. Mine's not. So go ahead.
Well, I'll let Brent finish what he's saying, then you can ask your crazy question.
Okay.
But I want
Okay.
to know about this
yeah.
fire situation. Go
So
ahead
so
and finish
mine
your
was
thought.
I loved using sage on sage because there was a lot of sage out there, and you could really put a lot of weight and energy into it, and you just pushed hard, and you would either, if you were doing a hand drill, which was hard to do with sage because it was hard to find long enough pieces. So that was usually a bow drill. And then my fireboard would also be sage because I could put a lot more effort into it and I wouldn't smother the coal. But there's also a lot of cottonwood down in that area of the United States. And so if you were to put the same kind of effort into like a cottonwood root, you'd drill right through it and you would never create a coal. You'd smother your coal right off the bat.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Wow.
So I'm just curious.
It's an art form.
I'm
Yeah,
just
it
I'm
is
just curious.
art.
You've taught a lot of these, right?
Yeah.
A lot of these sessions.
Yeah.
You don't have to give names because we're not into like embarrassing people, but except for me and Jeremiah. But I gotta know, have you ever had people that when that weekend was over, you're just like, I pray they never go out into the woods by themselves?
Yeah, there's been a few.
Yeah. Tell us about
What are
them.
what are some things that you've seen out there, like that you've just kind of shaking your head like, oh man, what are these people thinking?
Yeah, I had one student that we were out there, and they were pretty good at actually like starting fires. They picked up on that, but what they were terrible about was common sense and like just identifying threats in the wild and stuff. So a great example of this is they wanted to learn how to track animals so that they could trap or potentially hunt. And I was like, okay, yeah, let's go find a game trail. And we came across a game trail that had mule deer tracks. And so we were following that. And I was like, look, there's mule deer scat. So you can see where they're moving along here. And I had them follow the trail for a little bit and try and pick out how many different hoof sets there were. And at one point they stopped and they're like, oh, well, these are bigger hoof prints. So this must be an elk. And I was like, nope, it's not an elk. And they're like, oh, is that an altitude thing? Like, at what altitude does a deer become an elk? And I was like, well, that's a genetics thing. Like, there's different species. You wrapped your head around it like that. That broke him. Like the rest of the trip, he was like,
So what altitude does a wildcat become a mountain lion?
yeah, exactly.
You know,
That's one for a biologist. That's not me.
are there any more of those? Do you have any more of those you'd be willing to tell?
Oh yeah. So there's a plethora of them.
We're not breaking any
Yeah.
HIPAA laws, right? We're good with this.
No, because these are my things. So yeah. They're always great, but one of them also was we were out in the desert, and most of the plants out in the desert survive by getting spikes on them or something. And there's something called lamb's ear that you can use as toilet paper. And one of my students one time was like, "Hey, I need to go to the bathroom." I was like, "Cool. Do you have some lamb's ear?" And they're like, "No." And I was like, "Well, here's some. Let me show you. Like, grab these leaves and go off." And I was like, "There's a bunch through this area. Like, you'll find some. Just go dig a hole and come back when you're done. And just call out where you start digging your hole so that we know where you are and we're not going to walk up on you. But also, if you don't come back, like we can come check on you." And they're like, "Okay." And they came back just walking not right. And I was like, "You okay, man?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm good." And I was like, "You don't seem all right." And he was like, "I don't know what it is, but I was out there grabbing the lamb's ear, and he's like, and it started stinging when I was wiping." And I was like, "Oh no, no, that's not supposed to happen." So I was like, "Show me where you got the extra lamb's ear." We went out there, and he found a patch of stinging nettle, and just
Oh
went to town on his backside, and I felt so terrible for that guy because it's just like, "Oh, here's some lotion, and like we'll go find a stream somewhere and try and take care of this." But
We
yeah,
have
that
those in
guy,
Kentucky.
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
Those are miserable.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it sucks
Oh
for a couple
my
minutes.
gosh.
I can't
yeah,
imagine on your butt. That would be I mean, on your leg, it hurts.
yeah, yeah. I
Can you
man,
imagine?
yeah, that one was a rough one. So yeah,
I bet you get a lot
Stinging
of
nettles.
lack of common sense. I mean, people are out there. You don't want to like be negative, but you know, you're probably a common sense guy. You're highly trained. You're trained to assess threats and all this stuff that you're talking about. Then
yeah,
you're going out here with rookie hour, and these people have no idea. And you're like, how do you even function in a normal world? I
yeah,
mean, you're out here so wiping your butt with stinging nettle.
yeah. Yeah, that
Oh
one was a bad one for him. I felt terrible. And yeah, there's all kinds of stuff like that from people stabbing themselves while trying to learn knife safety. Because someone comes out with a pocket knife, like you anticipate that they know how to use the tool they have, but that was not
sure.
always the case.
Yeah,
And
that's not going to be the case. That's true.
Did you
Hey,
have to do
we
some
got a couple real
stitches?
quick. We got a couple we got a super chat and a super sticker out here. We'll make sure we get to these.
All right.
Nick Rambles. I don't think he typed that out. I think that was an emoji that translated because all it says is a pile of poop with a face. And I don't think he's calling any of us that. At least I hope not. So I'm going to assume that's what that was. We've also got one from Rachel Jean, the Gypsy Queen. She said, just being generous, giving us $20. Really nice.
Oh,
Appreciate that. So kind. Um, I'll tell you what, man. There's another guy on here, Tyler. I'm going to put up another comment as he goes, I was wondering if poop was still a thing. And then he put, what about Gonex? That's still around too?
oh, that's a little inside joke for us. So
Here's
there.
Tyler. You're going to catch up and you're going to find out that it's gone from Gonex to child leashes.
oh
We
yeah,
are on.
We're into the land of child leashes these days. Speaking of that, did you have any people that you went on with that you thought, man, I need to get a leash on this guy?
oh yeah,
People just
yeah.
try to run off and do
There
their
were a
own
couple that
thing.
were just wanderers. Like you'd be on the top of a cliff and it's rocky out there, and especially if you get over 10,000 feet because you hit the timber line and stuff crumbles a little bit easier there. And it'd be like, "Hey, stay away from that ledge." And then like 5 minutes later, you look over and the person is like walking on that ledge, and I'm like, "I didn't know you were suicidal, man. Like, come back over here." Like,
Yes. This is
So,
something I'm so adamant on. I cannot comprehend how people don't understand this. They want to go climb on this rock to take a picture, and they're part of a group that I'm part of, and we're in the woods. And I just cannot express enough how selfish I am, because if they die, it's going to totally ruin my trip, dude.
oh yeah,
Like, the trip is over. I'm calling John May with Search and Rescue. And for those that don't know, check out last week's episode. Another expert in the field, but you just can't understate it. They got to get the selfie, or whatever it is. Dangle the legs off the cliff. You ever get any of that? Like, oh,
oh
you
yeah,
got to get my picture here. Let me climb on top of this rock. But it's like a 400-foot fall.
yeah, yeah. I would get a lot of that. Not so much when I was a survival guide. I did a lot of other guiding, and that happened a lot more. So I was a snowmobile tour guide for a while, and that one was crazy. It was always, hey, let's go into this avalanche area and try and get some photos or do something awesome. I'm like, hey, let's not. And then I was also a whitewater river guide for a while, and that one was crazy because you'd go down and you'd stop, take a hike somewhere along the way, and they were always like, hey, get a photo of me here. I'm like, how about you step away from that widowmaker that's going to drop you 600 feet to your doom, and let's take a picture like 10 feet this direction.
That
So
still has a beautiful view.
yeah, it still has a beautiful view, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's
It's
not going to be.
amazing how beautiful views can be without being death defying.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Can you
it
give
is.
me some price points on these guides and stuff? So you work for different companies, I would assume,
Yeah,
unless you had your own business at some of these. But I assume you work with a company. They pay a contract with you. Hey, you're taking this group out. How much, like for how much per person? I assume it depends on where you're going in the trip and stuff and how long. But give me
yeah,
some price points. Let's say I wanted a snowmobile trip. How long does it last? How much does it cost as a customer? And then let's go to the hiking, survival, etc.
yeah, yeah. So back when I was doing the snowmobiling, they just did single day tours, and it ranged anywhere from like a 1 hour tour being $75 a person, and that came with like equipment rentals and everything. Um, all the way up to you could do like an all day private tour, which was $75 an hour. And if it was 8, 10 hours, however long you needed it to be, that's how
And
long
where
you would.
was this at? What
This was
state?
back when I lived in Park City, Utah. So that was
Okay.
back when I was in there. So I worked for Deer Valley Snowmobiling at the time. So they went up around the backside of Deer Valley, which has now been hyper developed. There's a lot of ski runs and resorts there now. So it's kind of hard to do that. You can still get into the backcountry, and they've since moved since I worked for them. But that one was pretty good, and I enjoyed it. I got to meet a wide variety of people. Sometimes celebrities would come out um, and
Mm.
go snowmobiling and skiing. So it
Did
was a
you
great
did you
time.
meet on the celebrities? Did you meet anybody who's like, oh, this is a cool guy or girl? I could see myself hanging out with them.
Yeah, there were a few. So I met the Olsen twins back before they like really grew up. They came out and they filmed like their Sweet 16 movie. It had
Oh,
snowmobiling in it, and that was filmed there. So a lot of the stunts and stuff and individuals that were driving the snowmobiles around and doing crazy things in that video, those were other guides and individuals that worked for the company with us. So they were pretty awesome. They were really nice. Um, Kiefer Sutherland came out one time and I met him. He was nice. And then Scarlett Johansson came out, and I didn't take her on her tour, but she was hilarious. She was super fun, nice lady. So
yeah,
yeah,
I'm sure they're just
That's
average
awesome.
people hanging
yeah,
out, having fun. Where's
yeah.
John's head, by the way?
I don't know.
Did I disappear?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I
So you can
see.
hear me, but I'm not there.
Yes, Brent is big, and he's on my. Well, I guess it would be my right in real life, but it's flipped on the image,
So
so
I
it's to
guess
my.
I just disappeared somehow, huh?
Yeah.
Let, let me
Yeah.
play around, see if I can figure out what's going on here.
All right, you go ahead. I'm going to keep talking to Brent. I'm curious. What about it? Let's say we go on a private survival. It's the three guides. You're the head man. We're going. We don't get flooded out, but there's 7 of us. How much are we paying for that? I assume it's an overnighter.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of those were like week long, and then there was a division of the company that was doing like the troubled teens and stuff like that. But that was
Uh-huh.
supposed to be like a shorter program that was hopefully done in a month to 3 months max. Um, but if you were doing like the private tours, those just ranged on how many guides you needed and how big the size of your group was. So you were usually paying for just the guide's time, which at the time that I was doing it, it averaged out to about $1,000 a guide a week. So
Okay.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
probably more
that's
expensive now with inflation. So
sure. Yeah, probably triple now. Who knows? But
yeah,
I that's something that I thought about too, because I discovered backpacking like around 2018, and you actually can sign up with companies and travel and be a guide and stuff, and you don't have to like be an expert or anything. I'm sure that there's some certifications and stuff that'd be great to have, and some trainings, but it'd be an extra way to make money, but I didn't want the responsibility of having those people out there. Like I'm a teacher, so I'm constantly having to be responsible for hundreds of teenagers every day. But I thought, man, out in the woods, I don't think it would be my job. It's kind of like a little escape, like you were talking about earlier. Whenever you come home, it's not that you dread coming home. It's just like the woods are awesome, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. Yeah, no, it was great, and it was great for my mental health and everything at the time. Because when I actually had that ankle surgery, the doctor told me I'd probably never run again, and my goal had been to join the military. And oh,
John, I don't know. John's flipped around to, oh, we have just John on the screen now. Hold that thought,
We're
Brent. I don't
coming
know what's
back.
going
We're coming back. It's all coming back to me now. So
on.
we're all
okay,
over the
Oh,
place now. What's up with this funky look?
I
uh,
don't know what John's doing with these layouts. Oh my gosh. Did you switch cameras, John?
Yeah, well, now it's all over the place. Watch, I'm gonna get this right. Give me a chance here.
You get it right. I'm loving the comments. Bridget's on here and said, we lost John. He's invisible.
It's still not wanting to do it right. I don't know what's going on.
That's all right. As long as you can get us all three on the screen, I don't think it'll
Well, I'll get
matter.
me fixed, but
nope.
I don't even have my headphones on. I can just barely hear you. But
Oh,
yeah. So my capture card just died on me. It won't work right now. So I am in the process of trying to repair my situation here a little bit if I can. We'll see what happens.
well, thanks for the $20 super chat. We got bills to pay here, and it looks like we got to buy John a new capture card. Oh
Yeah.
man! So I told you start thinking in the back of your mind, Brent, about let's say I'm total rookie, and I'm wanting to know how to use compass and a map, and everybody preaches over and over and over. One of the number one things you need to know how to do is like terrain associate and be able to be dropped in the middle of nowhere and do this terrain association and figure out how to use your compass and a map without any modern technology. Now, personally, I try to have multiple pieces of modern technology with GPS, like independent, like Garmin and cell phone, and somebody else that has a cell phone, so we can get the GPS. But can you give me kind of the Reader's Digest, for lack of a better term, version of a crash course in exactly what I just described? I'm wanting to know what are the essentials without us being, in person here. Obviously, we got to work with the tools that we have, but
Yeah,
what do I need to know?
yeah, that's pretty. You need a map and you need your compass. That's the minimum.
Yeah,
Um,
but they're setting up these different either
yeah,
degrees or I don't know. It's like certain dials you turn on the compass, and I feel like
yeah,
I have no idea what's going on. So
yeah. So
treat me like I'm a toddler here, and you're teaching.
yeah. So you're going to have a wide variety of compasses, but the ones that I encourage people to use are Linsatic compasses, and that has the bevel ring with the 360 degrees on it that you can dial on, and those 360 degrees relate to north, south, east, and west. So north is 0 or 360, south direct south is would be 180, east is 90, and then so
West
on
is
and so forth.
270.
Yeah, 270. Yeah. So as you're doing that, you take your map out and make sure that it has a legend, because at the bottom of that map, there's going to be a lot of very critical information you need. It's going to tell you what everything is on your map, but there's going to be two things that you really, really need to understand that map. And one of them is your declination diagram, right? And so what that tells you is that tells you the relationship of magnetic north to true north to grid north on your map, right? And if you have a topographical map, you take and you look at your compass, and your compass is pointing magnetic north. Well, that declination diagram is going to tell you how far off of true north that that reading is on your compass, right?
What's the
And that's
difference
going to
between the magnet north and the true north? True north is North Pole, and
yeah,
magnetic is
true
off
north
by
is
so many
the
degrees.
yep. True north is the North Pole, and then magnetic north is it changes from map to map, and that's why it's important depending on where you are in the world. If you're northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere, and even inside of the United States, sometimes it's 4 degrees off, sometimes it's 2.5 degrees off, sometimes it's like to the east, sometimes it's to the west. It just depends on the region you're in. And there's a lot of factors that go into that. Um, but that's going to give you a good idea there, especially if you have to travel a distance, because a real long distance, 4 to 5 degrees off, could equate to miles by missing your mark, right?
Sure.
So that's an important one. And then the next one is your contour interval. And so if you look at it on a topographical map, there's always going to be all these squiggly lines that go around it. They're usually in brown or a red brown coloring, and they're going to have numbers on them. But that contour interval is going to tell you what the difference is in elevation between those lines. So as the lines start to get closer and closer and closer, well, you're starting to see, if your contour interval says, hey, in between the lines, it's 20 feet of elevation or 10 meters or whatever it is. Different maps have different readings on that. So that's going to help you identify hills, mountains, and cliffs that are going to be obstacles along your way, but they're also going to be things that help you identify where you are, right? So if you're dropped out there and you're looking around and you're like, hey, off to my right, there's this long cliff face, and then like off in the distance I can see a pretty big mountain peak, and you look at your map and you don't know how to use those contour lines, you're not going to be able to identify where you are. You're going to start looking for different things on the map that it's like, hey, it says there's a hospital or a river or anything like that. If those aren't there, then you can't terrain associate. And that's exactly what terrain association is in that environment, is being able to look at your map, look at the way the ground is shaped on your map, and identify what you're looking at, right? It helps then if you can put your compass on your map and adjust it to magnetic north or true north, depending on what it is. And then from there, you identify where you are. So like where I said, hey, we have a cliff right over here, we have a mountain right over there. If I orient my map and I'm like, okay, so that's kind of northwest of me, I can take my lensatic compass, I can point it north, and then I can turn my compass and I can turn the bezel to point at that mountain. And I look down, and where that arrow aligns on your lensatic compass is the direction of travel to that mountain, right?
Mm.
So on my map, I can draw a line from where I am on that direction of travel. That azimuth is what we call it, that degree. And where it intersects with that mountain, well, now I know the distance from there to that mountain. If I find a second point that I can identify on the map and I can identify in my environment, I then intersect that coming back, and that tells me exactly where I am on my map.
See, I find this so interesting. And John, I don't think I've ever told you this or said it on the podcast, but when I was in middle school, I competed in Science Olympiad, which is like academic team, but for science. And um, one of my like competitions was topography. And so, I'm in sixth, seventh grade, but you're studying these maps and exactly what you're describing, the contour lines and how to terrain associate. Of course, we had to do like a written test. What they should have done is took us in a helicopter and dropped us off in the middle of nowhere and said, whoever makes it out alive wins the gold medal. But I assume what you want to do is try to find a high point, or if you can't find a high point that you can see far off so you can train associate, because I've seen like guys on TV literally climb a tree just so they can see the different mountaintops so they can figure out on their map where they're at. But that's TV. So I assume you're trying to look for a high point, and if you can't reach a high point to see, you're just trying to look for things in the distance so that you can identify the area and then go through the steps that you said.
Yeah. And sometimes you can't always do that. So like in my profession, we stayed away from the high ground because the high ground is where the enemy could identify you, right?
Oh, that's right.
And so we became masters of the low ground and hiding in the places where no one wanted to walk. So it was really important for us to be able to train associate off of like very close and yet identifiable features in those environments. So you'd go trudging through a swamp and have to be able to identify where the swamp starts going up on my west side. I know that I'm getting close to my next checkpoint. And from there, I'm going to turn to a different direction and travel further. So, yeah.
Wow. Besides swamps, what were the places that people didn't want to walk? I got a friend at work. He's like 80 years old and he served in Vietnam. And he was telling me about, him like leading these groups of men, and they're trying not to get blown up by, at the time, I guess it was mines, but, he's talking about walking through these rice paddy fields and where to step. And you had to go places that were miserable to walk, because if you stayed on the ground where it's dry and level, that's where you're going to get blown up. Besides the swamps, what other places did y'all master in the lowlands? I'm just curious.
Yeah. No, so anywhere where there's thick vegetation that you just really don't want to go through. So draws and stuff like that, those became places where it's easy to hide and not easy to maneuver, but it's a little easier to maneuver undetected. And then thicker vegetation, sometimes on cliff sides. If you could have like a covered cliffside that no one wanted to go there, that's a great place to set up a patrol base if you have to stop for the night or for the day, because we usually navigate it at night. So, yeah.
Gotcha.
That's wild. That is wild. Hey, we've got a few real quick comments, and then we've got to get the down low on something. But let me get to these comments that have been left up here real quick. We've got one from your wife, Invisible John. Yeah, that I believe that my video card just crapped out on me in the middle of this podcast. My whole screen flashed, and then I disappeared. And while you guys were talking, I was desperately trying to figure out why the camera's working, but apparently the card stopped working. So, so there's that. Then Rachel Jean, the Gypsy Queen, says, I like the Mick Foley basement look. Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm actually going for Mankind, but I like Mick Foley too. And then the last one is Delta Safari, said the Podcasterator 6000 new from Gonex. So
was it Cactus Jack? Am I getting that right?
It was Mick Foley, Cactus Jack, Mankind, and Dude Love.
Oh, I forgot about Dude Love.
All Brent, of the faces of Mick Foley's, Miss Foley's Brent, baby.
Were you a wrestling fan? Professional wrestling?
A little bit growing up, yeah.
Okay, I hate to admit it's my guilty pleasure. I still watch it. I won't even lie. I still watch it.
Did y'all watch the Mr. McMahon on Netflix? Oh,
yeah.
Pretty crazy.
It's
pretty crazy.
That dude's a mess, man. That dude's a mess. Speaking of a mess, why don't you give us we asked you about the poop story and you said, "Oh, I got a lot." So why don't you give us?
Do you want a deployed one, or do you want a backpacking?
I want whichever one you think is the funniest one of all of them.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the funniest one was probably I was in Iraq, and this was like around 2008, 2009 timeframe. And we were on this really long convoy, and I was just slamming energy drinks to stay awake at this point. And I just had to go to the bathroom. I was like, hey, we're going to have to stop out here in the desert, and I'm going to get out and go poop. And the convoy commander called back. He's like, no, we're not stopping. We don't know if it's safe. And I'm like, I don't care if it's safe. Like, we're going to do this. And they're like, nope, nope. So I was like, all right. So I just kicked open the back door of our vehicle while we were driving. I just hung out the back, dropped my pants, and just pooped on the road as we were going. And the guys behind me are calling up on the radio. They're like, what is going on? Why is this happening? And I was like, don't tell me I can't go to the bathroom. So, yeah.
You literally did a drive-by poop.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I literally did a drive-by poop. Yeah.
Oh
Wow,
my
this is the
goodness.
first.
Yeah.
We have not heard this one.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
That one was one of the. They never questioned it. They always stopped after
Well, they're probably traumatized.
Yeah, wait, I would be.
Nobody wants to watch that. Nobody wants to watch that. And the thing is, if you'd have been in the back vehicle, nobody would have thought about it because they wouldn't have seen it. But I think because the guys behind you actually had to see it, that's...
Yeah, there were like 3 or 4
incredible.
people behind us, and I was like, I don't care. This is happening.
That's incredible.
What about on the trail? Did it happen to you or did it happen to somebody else?
On the trail? Oh, it often happens to me. It happened to a lot of people. But on the trail, there was one time I was backpacking along, and I had found a water source, and it was kind of compromised. Some cattle had come through, and so I was doing my best to purify this water, and I had some anaerobic oxygen, which was just drops, and it just depletes bacteria to include stomach bacteria. And so I used a bunch of that. The water still tasted terrible, but I knew it was like safe and I wasn't going to get E. coli from it. So I was drinking that water, and then the next day, not even thinking about the consequences of having lower gut bacteria, I ate a really greasy meal. I had some rabbit meat, and that hit like a freight train. And so I frantically just like told the people I was backpacking with, I was like, guys, I gotta go. And I just took off into the woods. And I was like, I gotta go to the bathroom. And I ran frantically looking for a place that I could go where I wasn't going to be walked up on. And this was not in the military. This was just backpacking. And I found this rock, and it looked like a big enough rock. And just with strength that comes from like fear and panic, I yeeted that thing out of the ground. And I threw it out of the way. Didn't even take my pack off. Just sat there, and then expelled some demons that it was turned into an out-of-body experience pretty quickly. I got back, I was like sweating, put the rock back with my shame, and walked back to the group feeling significantly different. And I was like, I don't know what happened, but I pray it never happens again.
I just love the fact you said, I yeeted that thing out. I yeeted it out.
That's expert right there. That's expert level. It takes a real expert to know to move the rock, and that's your cat hole.
Yeah.
This guy, he's seen some things.
I'll tell you, we got some great comments. Wow, man, talk about poop with a view.
Yeah.
That first one. The next one, on duty. LOL.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
And then Woodall Trails got on here late, and he goes, well, I guess I'll rewatch this one.
Yeah, we got several poop stories out of you there, Brent. We got to hear the traumatizing stinging nettle too. Jonathan, you got to go back and hear that.
Man, that's good stuff. That is good stuff. Man, Brent, it has been awesome having you on, man. It has been awesome having you on. And I thank you for your service to our country. Genuinely, thank you. You've served for a long time, and we really appreciate. We wouldn't have the freedoms we have without guys like you. And so thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Is there anything that we can promote for you here on the podcast, or anything that anybody could check out or find more about you?
Oh yeah. So I do speak on occasion, do some motivational speaking or stuff like that. So I have a website, Brent Fuchs. or Brent-Fuchs.com. And then I also, I do teach land navigation and other stuff like that on request. And you can find that on shieldsolutions.com. So, and that's SCHILD solutions.com. So, yeah,
Very cool.
that's what I do that for fun. I love teaching and I love helping people learn more about what I've been passionate about for the last 40 years of my life. So
that's incredible, man. That's incredible. Thanks again for being on. If you don't mind hanging out in the green room, we'll get with you here in a second before we close things out. But thank you so much for being on, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Jeremiah, this is the funny part of this. Because of the other camera being gone, let me add myself in here so that we can do this. There we go. This has been like the weirdest episode. So this is 2 weeks now that there have been technical difficulties on my end, and that is weird.
It's pretty rare.
That doesn't happen often. So
well, I edited out a little behind the scenes for everybody. I edited out the technical difficulties that John had last week. So if anybody's a loyal listener, you heard like just normal conversation, and then the next thing John was like, my internet just totally shut down. And then we went on with our live. But yeah, man, you're on a roll. Next week, we're going to have a little technical difficulties. It's going to be smooth sailing with, how do you say Ben's last name? Ben Minigar?
Yeah, Miniger.
Oh, Miniger. Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, Ben.
It's not my nature. I can tell you that.
Ben Vinegar.
So he's actually just, I think he just recently finished the CDT, and we're going to find out about some of his adventures on the long trail. And if the CDT is not one a lot of people do unless they're doing the Triple Crown. That's not usually one of the three that they do just to do. Usually the two, I would say the higher traveled ones are your Pacific Crest Trail and your Appalachian Trail. But he did the Continental Divide, which is pretty cool. So I'm interested to see how that went for him and kind of the adventures he had along the way.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear some of the stories. You know, through hiking, you get some great stories. I know CDT is more of a create your own adventure.
Yeah.
Like it's a little bit looser on the trek, but in some locations. But I'm excited to unpack some of that and hear some of his stories and just the social aspects of the CDT too, because I know AT is huge socialization, but I think CDT is a little bit less socialized.
I would say a lot less compared to the Appalachian Trail. So I'm definitely curious about if he ended up with a tramley, if he ended up doing it by himself. Should be a really good conversation next week. Also, Jeremiah, you realize what happens in January?
What happens in January?
The Backpacking Podcast celebrates 5 years.
Oh my gosh, where has time went, dude? Our lives look completely different now.
Yeah, we're not even living in the same houses we lived in when we started this whole thing.
I know. Can you believe that we're doing the Backpacking Podcast full time? Can't believe it's taken off this much.
Full time. That's a new one. We're doing it full time. Yeah, it's like it's our only job.
You got to push it into fruition, man. You got to live your dreams into reality.
There it is. And I put out a little video on Instagram this past week. We've started working on the construction behind me finally. So we've got some shelving up and everything, and now we're getting ready to start building some walls, and before you know it, there should be finally a studio back there, and we'll be getting back to making some videos. This week, I'm actually going out on trail with the Trail Life Troop from our church, taking some high school guys and some other adults out on a backpacking trip this coming Friday. So pretty excited about doing that. Yeah.
I hope you're highly trained. I hope you got some of those Brent skills.
Well, the nice thing is it's a short hike and easy campsite area. Let's just put it that way.
I want to see those teenagers come home with blisters on their hands from where you were doing a hand drill and making those kids use the wrong kind of wood.
Well, all I know is that because of the kind of trip it is, the adults aren't allowed to make the fire. The kids have to do it because of part of their badge work. So, dude, I just get to kind of go and watch them do all the hard work. So
that's awesome.
I mean, it's not really a bad trip when you think about it. So we're actually doing shakedown packs with their packs this week to look through and make sure they know what they're bringing with them before they go, and then putting out a list of things they need to pick up before Friday. So should be a good trip, man. I'm really looking forward to it. And I will be taking a camera with me. So if that's not telling you something. So
more to come.
After the first of the year, the old YouTube channel might be popping back up again. That's all I'm gonna say.
Oh, I like that.
That's all I'm gonna say. Well, Jeremiah, it's been fun, man. I am so glad we had Brent on here. And for all you veterans who are out there, thank you so much for your service. We appreciate you. We can't thank you enough for giving us the freedoms that we have. And for myself and Jeremiah, thank you guys for tuning in. We will catch you on the next one.